Like to call this meeting to order. Let me get. All right, this is a special meeting of Livingston Parish Council for it's Monday, November 21st. It's 6:02. I'd like everyone to please stand for the invocation. Ms. Sandy, can you please do that for us?
Lord God in heaven, we thank you so much that we're able to stand here tonight together. We ask that you please give each one of the council members wisdom that they need, dear Lord, to make good decisions on behalf of the people they represent. And Lord, we just want to say we need you. We can't make it without you. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Yeah. Mr. Mack, can you listen to the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Sandy, call roll, please.
Mr. Latt is absent. Mr. McMorris?
Here.
Mr. Ard?
Here.
Mr. Girlinghouse is absent. Mr. Wascom?
Here.
Mr. Mack?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Talbert?
Here.
I'd like to remind everyone, if you have a cell phone, please turn it off, mute it.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, can we do?
I'll take some to do that.
I didn't see it on the agenda.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do councilman comments. Mr. Wascom?
Yeah, I know in Denham, in Livingston Parish, we really kind of hope that our neighbor cities lose in football, especially when we're playing them. But I would like to say that Denham Springs won this past Friday and beat Benton, and we're now advancing to the third round in the state playoffs. And I hope that my fellow council members in their cities are 100% in full support, and I believe they are. I believe they want Livingston Parish to go a long way. So we are hosting Ruston this week at the new Denham Springs High School football stadium. So I think Ruston has always been a top team and probably ranked 1 or 2 in the state. So we could use your support, Live Oak and Walker. If y'all would like to come out, and Holden and Watson and Albany and Jeremy, love to have you out there as well. So
he can't come
go
off
Yellow
the
Jackets.
Mr. Talbert, you got anything?
Yeah, maybe y'all can pray for another miracle and the Ruston coach will screw up, killing the clock as bad as the
Oh my God, did he?
Well, intimidation is part of the game.
Dude, I heard they set the fireworks off already and lost that ball game.
Here dumped the water on him.
Mr. King?
No, I reiterate what John's saying. It's going to be a good Friday night, win or lose. We went to the first game the other night in that new stadium, and it was amazing. It really was.
Matt?
Just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yep. Mr. McMorris?
I'm good.
All right, let's move on. Item 5 is 5A, adopt a resolution authorizing Ward 2 Water District to proceed with the issuance of a delivery of its not to exceed 18,000, is that right? 18 million taxable water revenue bonds in one or more series. Ms. Sandy, you need to read this by title or anything?
Did Jim Ryan request this? Is he doing the bonds?
Yep.
Yeah, Jim called me the other day. What this amounts to, I think 12 million of this is going to water meters and installation of automatic water meters. And the balance of the money is to upgrade lines and some stuff.
Okay.
It's I think it's USDA. Is it kind of like USDA water revenue?
It was time sensitive, that's why we had to do this special
Sure,
meeting.
sure.
Because
to get on the state revenue bond, to get on state bond commission.
So he said when they released it, he wants to have everything ready where he's first in line.
That's fine, and I know Jim does a good job. I just know that I'm just wondering, are they factoring in a rate increase, or are they factoring in the savings to pay the note? I'm just, that's my, I'm sure they've done their homework, and I hope that they have, because it's going to, they'll probably have to raise rates on some people as well, but if they provide a better service and it brings a savings, then maybe they can use that to offset the cost of the bonds.
I think when they got their new contract for meter readers, it was a substantial increase over what they'd paid before, and I think I mean, I think they've been aware that there have been some issues with the reading of meters with the new
Lots of
service. So they're trying, I think they're trying to become
And
a little more efficient in their operation.
And I think we have a good board. I think they're doing a good job, and I really have a lot of confidence in Mr. Jim Ryan that he's doing the best for it. So I'll make a motion, we adopt that resolution.
Motion by Mr. Wascom, second by Mr. Talbot. Any comments from the public on this? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Item B is introduction of ordinance. You need to read this one, Ms. Sandy?
Yeah. The proposed ordinance 2256. This is an ordinance to amend Part 3 Land Development Code, Chapter 100, General and Administrative Provisions, Section 100-5, penalty for violations of this chapter by adding an amendment for the allowance of enforcement officers to write citations and summons for court appearances. And the public hearing will be held at 6 p.m. on December the 8th.
This is one we introduced and then didn't read. We didn't introduce it properly after the ordinance committee thing, I think. Is this right, Sandy?
I know we had some discussions in the ordinance committee on this.
And this was one that Chris Moody had recommended. Can you,
This is Chris and Sam.
can you give me a recap of exactly what this ordinance is? And not just for me, but for
Basically,
everybody
we
listening.
have two officers for the parish. We call them our all compliance officers. They do the cease and desist on stuff. And this just kind of really gives them authority to do a proper stop work without having to go through the channels of the sheriff's office and get stuff signed by the judge and all that. They can actually go out there and do it.
Write the summons right then.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of doing it now, but it's just
Put some teeth in it.
we putting some teeth to it, is what we
Good.
do.
Need that.
So, I mean, would it give them the ability to arrest someone? I mean, how,
Taking the rest, all they can do is issue
what
summons.
changes does it make than what they're doing now is my
Make it
question.
legal.
So what, it wasn't legal for us to put a cease and desist order on people's door?
Well, they,
After they got the.
I guess
warrant signed.
they can ask you to do a stop and assist, but I mean, you could actually say no. I mean,
If it's signed by the court,
you can say no.
We've shut down business before.
I know we have, but I mean,
So,
we have a lot of
I don't know
ordinances,
why
if you
we-
look at them, that, I mean, we don't have no way to enforce them, and that's what we've been
I'll
doing
try
a
to-
lot
I'll
of.
try to get a few
This
more
more
questions
homework,
asked outside of a meeting so I don't drag this
But I mean,
on.
what we said, both of the guys that we have are both former police officers, so they know how
Yeah,
to handle the
yeah, right,
situation. I mean, we're not just giving somebody that don't know how to handle this situation authority to go
Sure.
speak to people.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
so we good with that? No more, anybody else got any comments
Just
on it? We'll move
introduction,
on
so
to
we
the
don't have
next one.
nothing else. Yeah.
All right, C, you need to read it by title too?
This will be proposed ordinance 22-57. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 125 subdivision regulations of Section 125-52, Part D5, procedures for subdivisions without improvements, and Section 125-68, Part D5, procedures for subdivisions with improvements, and Section 117-50, amendments or changes to the development regulations or district map of Chapter 117 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of Livingston Parish. And the public hearing will be December the 8th at 6 p.m.
This ordinance simply says that if you've made a submittal, and it basically applies to old subdivisions prior to the changes, and for some reason, you have to redesign you've got to make 20% reduction in outflow, then you've got to redesign your pond, you have a reduction in lots, then with that reduction, you don't have to make a resubmittal.
Because we're essentially forcing them to lose lots. They didn't do it on their own.
And the other part of the deal basically says that if a preliminary plat has been approved, and you're doing the drainage impact study, or, preliminary plat's been approved, or final plat or whatever, that you can't unzone them, meaning that if I own 10 acres in Watson and I made a submittal, and the map comes out and the map contradicts what my submittal was for, my submittal trumps the planning map.
Just introduction to.
That's just an introduction also.
Comments on this?
So what does
The only
this,
thing I wanted to, go ahead, Gerald.
I'm just wondering, what does this do to us? I mean, we set a plan going forward, correct, in the beginning? So I'm just wondering, how's this going to benefit anybody? Except the contractors, and I'm being honest, because when they started,
I'm with you on that.
Okay, so I'll tell you, so this is, I'll tell you, this was, the, part of it was Ms. Morgan brought it to us, because she sat through all our discussions on 125 and the amendments. And she felt like our intent was that, you know, we weren't penalizing people who had already had subdivisions designed. Now, it's not, we're not talking about you're good forever, but for example, a particular subdivision on Jubin, was it Jubin or whatever, out there, somewhere in that neighborhood, there was a commercial development in the front, a residential development in the back. The original plan was that they were gonna do the drainage impact study for the original, and then the drainage impact study for the back. Well, when they made their submittal, DOT had a problem with doing a two-part drainage impact study. They wanted it all done at one time. So they had to go back and start the drainage impact study again. Well, the ordinance says when you start a drainage impact study again, then you've got to meet the new standard, which required a 20% reduction in outfall. So the drainage for this development is going to be improved. However, to meet that standard, they had to reduce the lots by 6. Cut out 6 lots of the original development to increase the pond. So we as a parish are gaining drainage improvements, but we don't want to make them go through the process again, because now they will have to go through the process at the end of 2 years. If they haven't developed, you know, the residential section or something's not developed, they'll have to go through the development thing in 2 years. But all we're doing is saying that there have been developments that have been approved based on a certain fiscal, you know, certain financial, you know, aspect. They've looked at the cost of property, cost of development, and they're moving forward. What we're not trying to do is penalize those developments, but we are getting the drainage impact study. So it was Ms. Morgan's recommendation that if the lot reduction, it was simply a lot reduction, that they not have to be resubmitted. She said that was based on her, you know, interpretation of the discussion, that was the intent. However, Mr. Moody said the way the law is written, they've got to do a whole new submittal. So Ms. Morgan's asked that we say as long as there was a reduction in lots, that they did not have to resubmit. This will not affect any subdivisions that were approved under the new standard. It will not affect any subdivisions that already have a 20% reduction. This is purely on some subdivisions that were coming through that had already been approved. Some of them have already been built, parts of them already been built. When they came to do the second part, they had to approve the drainage impact study. So that's all it amounts to. If there's a reduction in lots, typically before this ordinance was changed, a reduction in lots didn't cause you to come back before the council at all. But we eliminated the 5% variance. You know, used to you could increase by 5 or 6 lots, and if it was within the 5%, you didn't have to come back. So all we're saying, the only change we're making is if you have a reduction in lots because of drainage, that you don't have to resubmit. And Ms. Morgan can come testify to this in 2 weeks on the 8th. She just wasn't here tonight for the introduction. And then the other part of this thing is, for example, there have been subdivisions that have been approved, but the maps come out, people aren't necessarily looking at what's been approved or is in the design standard or whatever. We've had people spending money on land. It could be a subdivision, it could be a corner for a gas station, it could be, you know, somebody's, you know, paintball facility, it could be all kind of things. They're zoned a particular, when the map comes out, they might be, you know, the councilman might have designated this zoning as rural. However, it's been approved by the planning commission and this council, depending on when it was done, to have something else there. And it was Mr. Moody's, in our discussion, you can't very well go back and stop somebody from developing something that's already been approved because you created a zoning after the fact. So all we're saying is that if something's preliminary approved, whether it be the setback, the servitude, any part of that development, zoning cannot stop that development. So basically, I might have a development that's approved in the Watson area. You know, but I'm not aware, you know.
Oh, I do.
You know, we got a development approved and you on the map might have already, AFA, when they did the map a year ago or whatever, you know, have that zone one particular way. We passed that map. Well, you can't say that that development is non-conforming to that map because that development was approved before that map was accepted. All we're saying is that if a development had been approved prior to the map being accepted, then the development approval trumps the zoning on the map. However, if the map is approved before a development's approved, then the zoning on the map trumps the approval of the development.
That's just grandfathering in.
That's basically what it says, but it doesn't, there's no
It didn't say
provision
it.
in the zoning ordinance that allows for grandfathering. So basically what we're saying is that if something's been pre-approved or been approved, then it trumps whatever the zoning map says.
Yeah, it's,
Mr. Mack?
I just want to say I'd like to discuss this more, and I'm sure we will in the public hearing and probably more in some more ordinance meetings, but my intent or my thought is, okay, so if you have a preliminary site plan that's approved, right, a development that's approved, then they are good to go to follow the old rules to design and develop their subdivision or commercial development. But as the ordinance is written and you have to resubmit, well, then you have to follow the new rules, okay? And if the new rules state that you have to follow new density requirements, then so be it, you have to follow the new density requirements also. And if the new rules say that the zoning classification has changed such that now you're in R1 instead of, say R4 or 5, then you have to follow the new rules, the new zoning requirements, if you have to resubmit. So that was my intent when we voted the new rules in. I think it should stay that way. I think that's what's best for Livingston Parish development. I think that's what's best for the people. And if I'm mistaken, well, then let's talk about it some more. But I don't agree with these changes. I think that if the law requires you to resubmit, and we talked about this more than once, that if you have to resubmit after the new rules were adopted or the new ordinances were adopted, then you have to follow the new rules and the new ordinances. So that's just what my thoughts are, but maybe we need to talk about this some more.
Maybe we will.
I mean, I personally kind of feel the same way on this one with you, Shane. I don't see why we can't just give a waiver to the subdivisions that this might affect versus us going back and changing the ordinance we put into place. Because I can already see a developer getting rid of 5 lots in the back because I need to make a drainage ditch, and then I can redesign my entire subdivision and do it the way I want, and I don't have to resubmit it. Where if we're giving waivers, we only give them a waiver on what they're actually changing.
All right, and I want to say one more thing too, and maybe we need to look at this and talk about this some more, but when you start to talk about future filings, when you start to talk about future phases of a development, okay, and you start to talk about how they're going to take 15, 20 years to develop. Well, my thought is if the law says, and we talked about this before we voted and put the new law in, but if the law says you got to come back and you got to redo the drainage plan, and that calls you to resubmit and change your preliminary site plan, well, then those new phases need to follow the new rules. I think you make it really difficult on the review engineers in the planning department if you're going to allow rules that are 15 years old to be followed. You know what I'm saying? I think that makes it very complicated to keep up with what rules should be followed and require people to follow those rules. So I think under the new rules, if you resubmit and the law says you have to resubmit, then you need to follow the new rules. And for future filings, for future phases, if you got to follow new drainage plans for those phases, you got to resubmit a preliminary site plan, well then you're going to be required to follow the new rules, and not half the new rules, all of the new rules, and that's going to include the new zoning requirements. And that's just my thought at the moment. We can talk more about this later, but That's how I would like to see us move forward.
Okay, so let's talk about zoning. So let's say I've got a 400 acre development that I've submitted, okay, and it's been approved. This is all gonna be zoned according to the way the ordinance is written. All that 400 acres is gonna be zoned one way. Just because you arbitrarily put some zoning in it as the councilman doesn't mean that after that subdivision's been approved, that whole area is zoned, that whole development zone. All we're saying is that the initial zoning can't be stopping the development. If I've submitted a 400 acre development and it's got, a density of 2.5 lots per acre, and your zone, the way you zoned it on your map is 3 lots an acre or 1 acre lots or whatever, you can't come after the fact and create a zoning map that conflicts with what my approval is. So my 400 acres, I could go to court, and my 400 acres is gonna be zoned 2 point, whatever I needed it to be to match that standard. And so it doesn't matter how long it takes me to develop it. Once I change that 400 acres, it doesn't matter if I come back and have to resubmit 16 times because it's taken me 20 years to develop it. That 400 acres is gonna be zoned the way it is. All we're saying is that the initial zoning, if I have a development that's been approved, the initial zoning of that land cannot stop my development. So if you made it 1 acre lots, but I'm approved at 2.5, then I'm gonna get my whole 400 acres changed to 2.5. That's all this ordinance says. You're wanting to say that you can only change sections of it at a time?
No, what I'm saying is, Gary, that you are correct unless you have to resubmit, which means you have to seek new approval. Okay, so your old approval goes away. That's per the law. Your old approval goes away. You're no longer, and you have to get new approval, and you have to follow the new law.
Okay, so here's my question.
And all of that is written, all of that was understood, and all of that was communicated, to my understanding.
Okay, here's my question. If I've got a 400 acre development and it's approved, and your map, and it's approved at 2.5, and your map says 1 acre, and I go get your map changed to 2.5, then that new 400 acres is zoned 2.5. It doesn't matter how many submittals I have to make in the future. The zoning of that 400 acres is at 2.5, not 1 acre lots.
I hear your argument, but I humbly disagree.
So you're telling me that
I'm telling you-
the old zoning's gonna stay, the zoning that you approved on
All
your
right,
map
so let's
is
talk
gonna
about it.
stay?
Let me just answer this. Okay, so
I just want to add that we definitely, we've all said the whole time, I guess I'm kind of in between y'all on this one, that the landowner has the right to come and say, hey, you zone my property for 1 acre lots for rural, but I've already got it approved for 2.5, so I want that 400 acres changed to meet what is already approved. So the landowner has the right to do that first year, to come in and basically say, I don't agree with you making this 1 acre lots because I'm already approved for 2.5.
Okay, so
So the landowner has that right now to come in and basically say, hey, y'all put me at 1 acre lots, but it's supposed to be 2.5 acre lots. I got one right now in my district already, and my map's been in law, 2 weeks? And I've got one already that I have to look at.
But so Jeff, here's my question is, the way it's written, the way we're doing it now, the guy's got to come see you. You got to look at it. You got to put it on the agenda, right? Do all that stuff. All this law says is that if I've got an approval and the zoning's supposed to be different, then the zoning is automatically trumps what my approval trumps whatever the zoning is. Are we?
Let me ask you this,
Are we
Gary.
going to continue to drag?
I can agree with
people?
that part of it. That part, I'm leaning more towards you. I'm more on the part about, the reduction in lots basically gives them the opportunity to redesign their subdivision without it having to be resubmitted.
Well, wait a second. We're not talking about moving roads or anything. We're talking about a reduction of lots. If you reduce lots that you don't have to resubmit. If you do anything else other than reduce lots,
Okay, so if I've got,
Because of drainage improvement.
because of drainage improvement.
No other
okay,
reason.
that's what I'm saying, I can take 5 lots out in the back away, I could build a ditch and say that that's where I'm
Well, wait a
draining, and I
second, okay.
could
No,
change the front of my
no,
subdivision however I want.
You can't change anything. All you can do is you can lose 5 lots. You don't have to resubmit. If you do anything else, you got to resubmit. All they're doing is losing lots. If I lose lots, then I can cut those lots out and the map doesn't have to come back. If I change anything else, it's got to come back. If it's a reduction of lots, let's say, for example, I got this whole subdivision drawn out, but I need to cut out 6 lots around the retention pond. 6 lots around the retention pond. I cut those lots out. I don't change a road. I don't change anything else. I'm just losing lots around the retention pond, then I don't have to resubmit. I change the entrance, I move a street, I draw a line in the front of the subdivision, it's coming back. This is only on lot reduction. If I lose 2 or 3 lots, then I just don't have to come back. I don't get to redesign my subdivision.
Okay, let me throw one idea, thought, or question. Like you said, you have a subdivision, and now you want to reduce a few lots for drainage. Well, those lots that you just reduced would still be way more lots than are allowed under the new laws, the new ordinances. What they're saying is, if you make changes, it's a good chance and a good opportunity to require developers to fall under the new rules and new laws, is what they're saying.
Gary, I just want to say a couple more things.
Fine, look,
I just remember.
We can discuss it until we can discuss it when it comes back up. I guess what I'm saying is that people made financial business decisions based on what our rules were. And they bought land and submitted plans and everything else. We're getting the reduction of outfall, and we're getting drainage improvements. By doing that, we're asking them to resubmit, to resubmit. I mean, we're talking about a small number of subdivisions here that it's going to impact. It's not going to impact anything that's being addressed after the fact. It's stuff that happened prior to the introduction of 125.
And then once those are gone, there'll be no more. So why don't we not do it, and then if there's a specific isolated case, we'll just do a waiver for that particular one.
I guess my point is, we've been trying in this council to write ordinances to eliminate waivers. We've been trying to do so.
I mean, you
I
can't.
understand, but my point is, you and I both know that there are some subdivisions that are more political than others. Let's face it. There are some subdivisions that if they come before a waiver, there's a good chance they ain't getting a waiver.
Is that a bad thing?
I think so. I think the deal is that
just-
you got to treat everybody the same way in that particular situation.
I
Look,
just want to say a couple more
introduced. We can
things.
discuss it on the 8th.
Yep, we can discuss it more when we do
Gary, thanks.
the night we adopt it. Gerald, you hadn't said anything. You got anything you want to say
I
on
just want
this?
to thank Gary for that information. He answered my question right off the bat there. So
Long
appreciate
time
that.
ago.
Huh?
He answered it a long time ago.
About 2 or 3 times.
All right, so we'll take up on it with this at the next meeting, which is when, Sandy?
Right.
December 8th. All right, so that'll be the night of the adoption. So that gives everybody a lot to think about.
Do some homework.
Do some homework, bring it out there. Hopefully some of y'all got some stuff y'all could call us on out of this and give us y'all's thoughts too, so we can decide on what we're gonna do with this. All right,
we're
I
good.
need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. King,
Everybody wants to stay here.
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Talbot.
Well, that's
All in favor?
unusual.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, sir.